not very well written book accuses Plato of being the first to establish a kind of totalitarian dictatorship. Is that true? Well, Plato's Republic is, we will discover as you read, it is a republic of a very special kind. It is not a regime like ours, devoted to maximizing individual liberties, but it is one that puts the education of its citizens, the education of its members, as its highest duty. The Republic, like the Greek polis, was a kind of tutelary association. And its principal good, its principal goal, was the education of citizens for positions of public leadership and high political responsibilities. It is always worthwhile to remember that Plato was above all a teacher. He was the founder of the first university, the Academy, the Platonic Academy, where we will find out later Aristotle came to study, among many others, Aristotle being but the most famous. Plato was the founder of this school. And this, in turn, spawned other philosophical schools throughout the Greek world and later the Roman world. With the demise of Rome in the early Christian centuries, these philosophical academies, these philosophical schools were absorbed into the medieval monasteries, and these in turn became the basis of the first European universities in places like Bologna, Paris, Oxford. These were in turn later transplanted to the New World and established in towns like Cambridge and, of course, New Haven. We can say today that this university is a direct ancestor of the Platonic Republic, of Plato's Academy. We are all here the heirs of Plato. Think of that. Without Plato, no Yale. We would not be here today. And I think that is a fact. I'll let you just ponder that for a moment. And in fact, let me even say a little more about this. The institutional and educational requirements of Plato's Republic share many features with a place like Yale. For example, in both the Platonic Callipolis, the just city, as well as this place, men and women are selected at a relatively early age because of their capacities for leadership, for courage, for self-discipline, and responsibility. They spend several years living together, eating together in common mess halls, exercising together, and studying together, of course, far from the oversight of their parents. The best of them are winnowed out to pursue further study and eventually assume positions of public leadership and responsibility. Throughout all of this, they are subjected to a course of rigorous study and physical training that will lead them to adopt prominent positions in the military and other branches of public service. Does this sound at all familiar to you? It should. Let me put it another way. If Plato is a fascist, what does that make you? Plato, of course, is an extremist. and he pushes his ideas to their most radical conclusions. That's what it is to be a philosopher. But he is also defining a kind of school. He regards the politeia, or the republic, because that is the original Greek title of the book, politeia or regime. He regards the politeia as a school whose chief goal is preparation for guidance and leadership of a community. If you don't believe me about this, maybe you will consider the words of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the great readers of Plato's Republic. Rousseau wrote in his Emile, "To get a good idea of public education," he says, "read Plato's Republic. It is not a political treatise, as those who merely judge books by their title think, but it is the finest, most beautiful work on education ever written." Rousseau. So, there we go. Let's look in a little. Let's now peek into the book itself. Just peek. Don't go too far. Start with the first line. Who remembers what the first line is? Oh, come on, you should know this. You're looking at the book, you're cheating. I went down to the Piraeus. I went down to the Piraeus. Why does Plato begin with this line? There's a story that I heard, I'm not sure altogether true, but it's a good story at least, about the famous German philosopher Martin Heidegger, who said that on his first teaching of the Republic, he went through the whole book, taught the whole book in one class, in one seminar, one semester. The last time he taught it, the final time he taught it, he never got beyond the first sentence. I went down to the Piraeus. What does it mean? Why does he begin with this? I went down, a going down. The Greek word for this is katabasis. I had made a descent. There is a book by a famous contemporary of Plato's, a man named Xenophon, who wrote a book called The Anabasis. The Anabasis means a going up, an ascent. But Plato begins this dialogue with this statement, I went down. The descent to the Piraeus, it is clearly modeled on Odysseus's descent to Hades in the Odyssey. And in fact, the work is a kind of philosophical odyssey that both imitates Homer, but also anticipates other great odysseys of the human mind, works by those like Cervantes or Joyce. The book is full, you will see, of a number of descents and ascents. The most famous climb upward, although we will not actually read these parts for this class, concerns the climb to the divided line, the famous image of the divided line in Book 6, and the ascent to the world of the imperishable forms. And then in the last book of the Republic, Book 10, there is once again a descent to the underworld, to the world of Hades. The work is not, in a sense, written simply as a sort of timeless philosophical treatise, but as a dramatic dialogue with a setting, a cast of characters, and a firm location in time and place. Let's say a little more about that time and place, already indicated in the phrase or in the sentence, I went down to the Piraeus. Plato was born in 427, which is 4 years after the commencement of the Peloponnesian War. He was a young man of 23 when the democracy in Athens was defeated, and he was only 28 when the restored democracy executed his friend and teacher Socrates in 399. Almost immediately after the trial of Socrates, Plato left Athens and traveled extensively throughout the Greek world. And upon his return, he established this school at Athens called the Academy for the Training of Philosophers, Statesmen, and Legislators. Plato lived a long time. He lived until the age of 80, and except for 2 expeditions to Sicily, where he went at the request of Dionysius to help try to establish a philosophical kingship in Syracuse, he remained in Athens teaching and writing. The Republic belongs to that period of Plato's work after his return to Athens after the execution of Socrates. The dominant feature of Plato's political theory, David Green, a great reader of Plato, has said, is the root and branch character of the change it advocates in existing institutions. Plato's desire for a kind of radical makeover of Athenian and Greek political institutions and cultures grew out of his experience of political defeat and despair. The utopianism of the book is in many ways the reverse side of the sense of profound disillusionment that he felt at the actual experience of the Athenian polis. This was not only true of his experience at home, but of his failed efforts to turn Dionysius's kingship in Sicily into a successful example of philosophical rule. In fact, we have, and I want to read to you in just a moment, a lengthy transcript of Plato's own account of why he came to write the Republic. One thing, of course, you note in the Republic is that Plato is nowhere present.